Plan to add Soil Biotics organic products to your 2024 crop program. Soil Boost is a raw humate product that is broadcast applied pre-plant to help improve soil structure, maintain nutrient availability, and stimulate microbial activity. Soil Biotics PHK is a dry granular humate product using a proprietary carrier blend. It enhances the uptake of nutrients, increases water holding capacity, and enhances soil biological structure. PHK may be broadcast, used in furrow, or banded. From pre-plant soil preparation to post-harvest soil maintenance, Soil Biotics organic products are formulated to work together to provide a continuous beneficial growth environment to meet all of your organic agricultural needs. For product details, visit soilbiotics.com. The folks at Byron Seeds believe organic requires a different perspective, plan, and approach. Organic isn't simply a different type of product or even a different way of farming. It's a different way of thinking, planning, commitment. It's a different philosophy on how to feed the world. Many won't understand, but the people at Byron Seeds do. We're owned by organic dairy farmers. We not only have the product, but we plan, manage, and execute organic. We speak your language, we share your struggles, and we laud your successes. Organic isn't a way of doing business, it's a community. We learn from each other. We're in this together. We'd be glad to talk cropping plans, management systems, the road to profitability. We understand what you're trying to do. We're farmers just like you. Visit us at byronseeds.net or give us a call at 800-801-3596. And thanks to Byron Seeds.
You're listening to Rooted in Organic. I'm Mike Klein, and along with Brian Wood, we are sitting down with Jerry D. Miller, who was a guest on the podcast before with just myself and talked about community. And today we want to revisit that conversation in a little more depth than we did the other time. So, Jerry, thanks so much for joining us. And can you just give a little bit of a background and who you are and what it is you do?
Yes, my name is Jerry Miller, Jerry D. Miller. My wife Gloria and our 6 children. We had 7 children. We had a farm accident when my oldest son, died in an accident 14 years ago in 2009. But we're on my wife's home farm. We own 173 acres of central Ohio ground, and we milk Jersey cows. We're grass-fed organic and market our milk through Organic Valley. As I've grown older, I'm 57 years old, and more and more of the farm responsibilities have passed on to my children, but I am still actively involved. I do every morning milking, and after that, the children kind of take things from there.
And so a little more into your background story, because you've had, I guess you could say you've had more than your fair share of tragedy in your life growing up, but that really helped shape your what you see as a need of community, isn't it?
It is. It definitely is. If the things we see as community and the things that we value so dearly in the Plain community, it's in our DNA of simply making the connection between our lifestyle and the ability to simply help each other. One thing that the Industrial Revolution has brought out so vividly is when we started going with the minute hand and the second hand. That was an invention of the Industrial Revolution. Before that, you worked from morning till evening. Hours and minutes had nothing to do with how much you make. Now, hours and minutes are the shortest way to a paycheck. And it makes it much more difficult as a community, as a Plain community, to be there when your neighbor really needs you. Because there's now a dollar amount fixed to every minute.
So I've had the honor to learn and work within the Plain community over the last 11 years. And we say Plain community as in a group of people, but it truly is a community. What, in your view, keeps that happening? Keeps that community there? Because it's so easy, like you just said, to just start to fade away from it and be more independent.
Mm-hmm. Well, probably what's central in an Amishman's life is simply church. And I can say it better with the German word. When I use the German word Gemeinde, Gemeinde is a church. Without a Gemeinde, you have no Gemeinschaft. Gemeinschaft is the social fabric and the network of interconnectedness that a church brings with its members. So the German word reflects it much better in my mind, this idea of a Gemeinde, of a church, and the interconnectedness of that as the members interact with each other socially, physically. We interact with each other physically. It's not just a matter of texting each other or a remote connection. It's a physical connection, which brings a interconnectedness and a responsibility to each one of our lives. To hopefully promote that and being able to pass that on to the next generation. I can't fully explain to you my view of what happens in a young man's life or a young child's life. I just know that from my own experience, I'm a grandpa, and when my grandchildren now come home on the farm, they constantly bombard me with, "Daddy, when's it time to go chore? Let's go chore. Let's go get the cows. Do we need hay tonight? Are we going to be mixing? It's time to go. If we don't go, it's going to get late." And they dress exactly like I dress. The same little muck boots, the same boots that I wear. And to see my grandchildren opening a gate and allowing 60, 70 Jersey cows to file past, it empowers them. I don't know exactly what happens within them, but I know that that child will be a different child than a child that grows up in front of a screen. There is a huge difference. From that relationship with something that is alive, the responsibility of caring for that in a stewardship manner that we can all relate to, there something happens in those children's lives. And I think it's ultimately important that our children are grounded in that type of, it shapes their worldview.
Do you think that can happen? You said without a screen, but let's go broader. Do you think that can happen without agriculture?
No, I don't think it can happen without agriculture. Agriculture without animals is simply, then we get to the point where there is really no stewardship involved. We forget the stewardship of the land. And I would make the argument that as we rape and pillage our soils, any society that is willing to do that is a short step away from raping, pillaging, and exploiting the female sector of our society. Our soil is the Mother Earth. It's the female part. As we care for that and learn to respect, take the lowly earthworm, just the lowly earthworm. It's the only creature in God's creation that the earthworm castings are a perfect 7. It doesn't matter if that worm lives in an alkaline soil or an acidic soil. The castings are 7. The great neutralizer. Isn't that amazing? As we learn to respect those parts of God's creation, and from that connectedness to our ecological nest, so we respect our fellow man, and we develop Gemeinschaft. I'll go back to that German word, Gemeinschaft, of our fellow neighbors, as we relate to them. As we leave our ecological nest, and as we forget our connectedness. The Bible tells us that dust thou art, unto dust thou shalt return. We were made from soil. That's who we are, as we care for it. My generation grew up with the food pyramid. You guys remember the food pyramid?
Mm-hmm.
You are what you eat. I would take that one step further. You are what your plants eat. And it has a huge impact on how we view people, how we view society, how we view community, as we care for the least of those amongst us. It shapes how we view the world.
And that's something that is passed to the next generation.
It is.
That respect needs to be taught to the next generation at a young age. That this is not something for you to just rob for your own personal gain. It's way bigger than that. It is loaned to us to use, but I don't even like to use the word use because there is too much of that being done right now, is just mining it for my generation's gain, and what are we leaving to the next generation? And your picture that you painted of turning the cows in with the children on a farm, how can you teach the love and respect from the soil on up with animals to a child that isn't in animal agriculture or isn't out in nature? Because you have to be able to pass that respect and stuff on in a different setting, because when you look at majority of the children today are not raised in an agriculture system or possibly even with any animals. So how do you share? Can you do that through community?
You can do that through community, Mike. I think the responsibility that we all have, and I fully realize that not all of us can live on a 173-acre farm. It's not possible. Greater society, it won't happen. It just won't happen. But who amongst us cannot have a little patio garden? Who cannot teach a child the miracle of putting a seed in the ground and watching it sprout and grow, and the weeds that also want to grow with that? It clearly teaches us that there's good and bad. We need to promote the good and weed out the bad. And we can do that in many small ways. The Bible talks about the church, and the church uses the physical body as an example of the church body. Well, remember, our physical body only has 2 feet. So somebody needs to be physically grounded to the soil. But not all of us need to be. But some of us need to be. That physical grounding of some of the people will pass on to the rest of the people. That does not take the responsibility of that from you teaching it to your children. Mm-hmm. Because there's ways, in small ways, that we can teach our children the things like that. No, we won't teach it maybe in a 20-acre field, but we teach it even a flower pot. The responsibility of taking care of something that is alive. If you neglect it, it will die. It teaches us life. It teaches us death. It teaches us the sprouting of a seed. It teaches us resurrection. There's so many life lessons in that we need to pass on that resonate within community.
So in the community, and obviously we're talking about the community you live in.
Yes.
And, replicating that, it takes a group of like-minded people. Mm-hmm. And I mean, we saw it in Georgia, mm-hmm. What White Oak Pastors has done to revitalize and build a community there that was basically non-existent. I live right in the middle of the community you speak of, and when Martha was diagnosed with cancer, the outpouring of support that I didn't realize existed until that happened, people that I hardly knew. It is just second nature where I live for people to care about each other. Now, you can't have just the good, because if you have people caring about you, and you also have people minding your business. Okay?
Yep.
It's just, that's what it is. But is there a fear of losing that sense of community where you live?
Oh, yes. Yes, there is. There's a real fear. There's a real sense of urgency in maintaining and doing things on purpose to maintain that community. If I may explain, it's kind of a long spiel, but if I think about our culture, think about our culture. Culture consists of the total activity of human beings and the result thereof. That's culture. That's how we build culture. So sometimes the plain folks get accused of being so concerned about their culture. Your culture is not going to get you to heaven anyway. Well, why are you so concerned about your culture? Well, answer me this. My argument would be this. If we go to a scientist that wants to grow something in a petri dish, he has a certain culture that will allow whatever he is growing to flourish in and do well in. And it will only flourish and do well in a certain culture. That's why we're so concerned about the culture that our children grow up in, so that we can immerse them in a culture that is conducive to building this type of community from the soil up. Does that make sense?
That makes sense, and it makes me wonder, is the fear that you're talking about of losing the community and the culture, has that always been there in your community, or is it stronger now? Where is that?
It's probably stronger now. It's always been there.
Mm-hmm.
But as we move into the electronic age, we face battles that we haven't faced, the Amish people haven't faced ever before. And how that will influence our culture is a huge question that we battle with every day.
Mm-hmm.
So what is there a single largest threat to community?
Probably the smartphone. The smartphone poses more threat to that type of culture and that type of community than anything that we have ever experienced. Simply from the aspect, we know, and you can delete anything you want to delete, right?
Yeah.
Okay. We know, and if we look at society as a whole, society has now for the last 10 years, 15 years, maybe 20 years, has tried to raise their children with technology. And I just ask you an honest question, has it worked? Has it worked?
I would say no.
That's where we come from. So the allure of that glittering screen and everything that it brings with it, and how captivating and addictive that it is. It's a different kind of addiction. In years past, when our young folks maybe tasted moments of the world, what they tasted did not have the addiction that the screen has. And that's a huge concern. That's a huge concern.
So something I've noticed, and obviously I'm not Amish, so I don't have that. I have almost a different. The larger community is the same. The smaller individual communities, mine is different than yours. But what I've seen that has actually bothered me is the unbelievable wealth that has come into the community. And along with wealth becomes individualism, because you don't need anybody's help. You don't need to go borrow a piece of equipment from the neighbor, because you can just buy it yourself. And that's something that I've noticed, is how how that has changed. How, when I grew up, in the early 80s as a child, there's a huge difference from then till now. And do you see that as a threat?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. When I grew up, Mike, and you can relate to this, growing up, I could stand in the front yard of our home. If I looked down the road and if I looked up the road, it was not unusual. I could count 7 to 10 farmers out tilling the land. And if they needed something, they came and asked. If they needed a piece of equipment, sometimes we could see that they needed a piece of equipment. They were getting the horses out and they were getting ready to go to the field, and we knew that their piece of equipment didn't work. And we'd quick hitch onto it and drag it up to the neighbor because we knew he needed it. He's ready to go. He's out in the field. He's ready to go. Now, some of the economic things that we face, even with the price of land that we face, yes, we are more affluent. Yes, we all have more money. But the price of land has outpaced even the affluency of the local people. Now I stand in the front yard and I think of that book, Silent Spring. Rachel Carson, I think it was the author. And I look up the road and I look down the road. There's still people living in those homesteads. But those farms are being farmed by wealthy outsiders and some not so wealthy outsiders that are still hanging on. But gone is the day of that camaraderie and that total interconnectedness that we felt back in those days. We try to recreate it. But the recreation of something is often not as authentic as the real thing.
Mm-hmm. When you look at weddings and funerals and all this stuff, when it was more agriculture-based, well, I mean, you just stopped what you were doing on the farm, you went and helped. Now, there's people needing to take off work. Goes back to your, because of the hour hand and the second hand, minute hand. So the dynamics are obviously changing. They have been forever because every generation thinks the next generation is dooming us. So you have to be open to change, but you're talking culture, and the central part of that is the key. Because stuff on the peripheral is always going to be changing.
Always changes.
And do you feel that there's enough people in the community to safeguard that culture?
I think there is. I have enough faith in my fellow man that I know this. I know, Mike and Brian, that I personally do not have all the answers. But I know that with the counsel of my brother, the answers are there. And they are still available if we avail ourselves to them. Jesus himself taught on the Sermon on the Mount. He said, "Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit" what? The earth. A physical place to live, a physical place to be. If we're going to be the city on the hill, if we're going to be salt of the earth, we have to live somewhere. And Jesus promised that. I think there always will be that core of people that will cling to this type of lifestyle and this type of belief and portray this type of community. It's going to look different. It's going to look different than what it already looks vastly different. Just for instance, and this doesn't really play into here, but yet it does. The last barn raising that was in our neighborhood, we only announced it in about 5 different church districts in our area, and we made sure that it didn't leak out to the media, because it becomes an absolute media circus. And the media wants to take every minute of it, and every minute of it, and every minute of it, and blast it. And we have Facebook, and we have Instagram, and we have Pinterest, and we have all kinds of things that I have no idea about. And we don't want that. We shy away from that simply because a barn raising, it's a very personal thing. It's a very personal thing. We're helping a neighbor, and I know that the world wants to see this, and to a degree they can see it. But the point I'm making is, longer ago, 25 years ago, that would have been unheard of, that we would not have publicly blasted it out through the whole community. There's a barn raising and we need help. Now we do it selectively, simply because you have people like OSHA, you have people like regulatory departments, and face it, when we have a barn raising, it's an absolute miracle. It's a major miracle that nobody gets hurt. I mean, OSHA could have an absolute field day.
They could pay all their dues in one day.
They could.
But that's the fear behind it being publicized.
Yes.
But okay, so playing devil's advocate, and
Yep.
almost quite literal a term here.
Yep. Go ahead.
Having that out on social media, or say a newspaper, news agency, whatever it is, the reason that they're interested in it is because it's a demonstration of community. And what you were just saying of being that light on the hill, the city on the hill, that is demonstrating that. So it almost argues in favor of saying we should blast this out so that people can see that we do still have community.
That's very true, Brian. But the flip side of it is this. We have seen so many different cultures and so many different people blast it all out. And where are they at?
Isn't that the ironic part?
Isn't that ironic?
They want to see the demonstration of community, but not do it.
Yes. Isn't that ironic?
Because then it all of a sudden it turns into they're doing it for show to see how community oriented it is, and then it loses its authenticity.
Yes.
And then it's not community anymore.
Then it's commercial. Mm-hmm. You know, you can take the same kind of argument. I've had people, when I've spoken in front of crowds of I'll say English people, outsiders, and they will ask us the question, why don't you send your young folks to college and get them educated? You guys would make awesome doctors and lawyers, and you could just make a huge impact in society. Well, we have nothing against a higher education per se. You know, I love Mike Klein, but he's never going to take out my appendix.
Ooh, I hope you're right.
You know, we use higher education, but we have not found a way to marry our ethics and our community into a bigger education, because our children never come back and embrace our ethics. We lose them in the world.
Mm-hmm. And when we talked about this with Dad, he mentioned that everybody starts out at the exact same level, and we have very, very successful people, but they all started out at the same level. And just like you said, it's nothing against the higher education, but the higher education, if you would then come back to the community, okay, you have this alphabet behind your name, so you're clearly going to have a different status than all beginning at square one.
Yes. That's why in Amish society, Mike, it works the best if we're all kind of the same, economically, socially. You know, just take it when we sit down and play a Monopoly game. Who squawks the loudest at the table?
The one with the most money.
Oh my goodness.
That's just a small example. That's just the way it works. Mm-hmm. The one with the most money. Mm-hmm. And in our society, it works best if we're all kind of the same.
But that has changed.
Oh, it has changed. It has changed. It has changed. But within that, we try to... You also have to realize that the ones that have the most money are also the ones that usually, not always, but usually, carry a huge part of the burden when we have a disaster in the community.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
They're the ones that belly up to the table and write the check.
Mm-hmm.
Because costs are no longer paid in $10 and $20. Mm-hmm. Costs are now paid in $5,000 and $10,000.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And it's interesting to watch. You know, it's the same. I work closely in the northern Indiana community, and there is a lot of wealth in that community as well. And there's one thing I've observed. Again, I'd be considered an outsider. I didn't grow up Amish. I'm not Amish. I'm not a Plain community member at all. I've just had the chance to work with them. And one thing I've observed, in one of the differences, and I think part of what keeps that culture, is that when there's a successful business person, number one, you don't know. You'd be able to walk around a room, and everybody in the Plain community, I wouldn't be able to say, oh, that's the successful guy right there. But in the English community, I probably could, because of what they might wear, just that.
The car they drive.
And then you go out. That's where I was going next, is you go out in the parking lot, and everybody jumps in their buggy and their horse, and it all looks the same.
To an outsider, it looks the same. I can tell the difference.
You can tell the difference because of the dollar amount on the horse.
The dollar amount on the horse, but they're more subtle. The differences are much more subtle.
It's a sports car to a Geo Metro in our world.
Yeah.
And to me, it all looks like the same horse.
Yeah. Yeah. But those are things that really, really concern us. They do. But we do still believe that within a brotherhood, I'll go back to that same German word again, within a Gemeinschaft, that is where we find the answers. And that is where we find true meaning in life. Brian, if as wealthy as people are in the Amish community, and people are wealthy, they're truly wealthy.
Mm-hmm.
If wealth would bring happiness, and pleasure would bring happiness, we would think that the greater society out around us would be the happiest people on planet Earth.
That's a great point.
Yep.
But instead, we're seeing this absolute tsunami of a return to homesteading, a return to land, a return to the roots, a return to a rural lifestyle. Why? Because we have this God-given instinct in each and every one of us to nurture a plant, to be part of something that is bigger than ourselves. Let's go back to World War II and the battle on Iwo Jima, and that iconic picture of the 5 or 6 soldiers that were raising the American flag on Japanese soil. Why was that picture so iconic? Why did that become an icon in American society in the years following that? It's kind of lost its popularity now, probably, but it's still people recognize that picture. Mm-hmm. Why? Because those 4 men were part of something that was much bigger than themselves. And they found community in that. And that resonates with people. Mm-hmm. Because it's much bigger. Much bigger. Those 4 men could no more accomplish what they accomplished there that day than they had no chance. But the greater, the whole, the big picture, they were part of that. And that resonates with the very core of humanity.
That sense of belonging.
Yes.
And to have real relationships, I think, is a lot of the world's issues right now.
Authentic relationships.
Because so many of our relationships are smartphone.
Yes.
Are through communication that is not stopping beside the road and talking to the neighbor.
Yes.
And, like you said, if everybody would be the happiest people in the world if wealth, and that would bring happiness. I read something the other day. It said that if you're number one focus in life is to become wealthy, you will become wealthy, and that will be the only thing you have.
Yeah. Yeah, Mike.
And it's like, oh, well, I don't have to worry that
Yes,
happening.
some of the wealthiest people that I know is all they have is money.
Mm-hmm.
That's all they have.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
What's money?
So you said you do have fears of things coming in and destroying what has been built within your community. You talked a little bit about it, but do you have hope?
Oh, yes. Yes, I have hope. I have hope and confidence in my fellow man.
Is that outside of your community too?
You know, Brian, I don't know.
Or do you not can you not concern yourself with that?
You know, I'm going to tell you a little story, and you can delete it then too. But, you know, on the way traveling out, we met your brother Tim. He was in Indiana on Sunday in church. And we traveled out from Holmes County, and we met him at a McDonald's parking lot on a Sunday afternoon and picked him up in Indiana when we were traveling to Wisconsin. I went into that McDonald's. I haven't been in one for quite a while. I wanted a cup of coffee and a sandwich. It was like 1 o'clock in the afternoon. And the person behind the counter was the very embodiment of that lifestyle. The very embodiment of that lifestyle. It was the type of person that the reason that we have to put warning labels on preparation H for oral, not for oral use. But you get the point I'm making. That's where this has gone. And to me, I have hope in my society. I do. That we can portray a better way. To reach a person like that looks very daunting to me. Very daunting.
But you have to take care of your own backyard before you can take care of the whole neighbor's backyard.
That's right.
So when I look at my kids and their friends, the time will come when there will be a shift. And we're seeing that shift in the homesteader movement. The joy of like showing the kids how to get back into a garden. There is definitely a movement happening there. But going back to the smaller community, what can we do? I mean, the land prices in Holmes County are insane. So what can be done to preserve more farmland and get people back to agriculture in Holmes County? Is that possible?
I don't know, Mike, that it's necessarily possible in Holmes County. It's possible in small ways. It's possible in very few of us do not have the opportunity to garden. Very few of us do not have the opportunity to give a child the joy of picking up a fresh egg in a nest. Very few of us cannot do that. Those are things where I think we need to make headways. Those are things that I think we need to teach to people. The care of that animal is so different than anything else that you can give people, because there's a responsibility there. It teaches responsibility, and it teaches a relationship. It's something that is alive. It's not dead. And how you handle that relationship has consequences. It's in real time. It's not in this fabricated world that so many people live in. I could go back to, I gave a presentation in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, in the homesteading conference. And I don't think I've ever been in a conference. I probably have. But this was in the summertime. And the people that were there was a crowd of between 5,000 and 6,000 people there. And they were some of the most beautiful people physically that I've ever seen on the face of this earth. These people were vibrant. They had a beautiful complexion. They were genuine people. Completely different from that poor individual in that McDonald's the other Sunday. Completely different. These were people that were still connected. There's something very real between the connection. Once we totally leave our ecological nest, we leave something behind that is so valuable that many of us don't even see it. Even the health. Look at the health of people and how people live and what they think and what they do. The culture that they're in. I have a hard time explaining it.
Well, it goes back to exactly what you were saying about teaching the values of soil.
Yes.
And in teaching those values, it's all tied together.
It's all tied together. Yep. Seeing the whole picture.
Mm-hmm. Is it your view, Jerry, that you demonstrate these values and others can see it? Or you go teach others these values?
Well, Brian, I hope I demonstrate these values.
Sure. Yep.
I hope I do. And teaching others, there's often more caught than taught. But I also believe that there's a responsibility in trying to teach these values to the outside people, that if I get that opportunity, I view it as exactly that, a precious opportunity to give people a small glimpse of what we believe and what we try to live. Mm-hmm. We are failing human beings. We make many mistakes, but we try to live. Mm-hmm. We try to live.
And do you share that from the standpoint of the benefit you've gotten from community?
I do.
Or from the flip side of that?
The benefit of what I've seen, what I've experienced in my own life. Mm-hmm. And, I can tell you some stories if you want to hear them, or if you don't.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so, I can go back to when I was a child. I was 4 years old when Dad died. And there was 12 of us, 11. There was 12 children. One passed away. One child died I had a sister that passed away as a baby. But I can give you Mom's story, and that is, it's a long story. It's a very personal story, but just to condense it, she buried a child in 1965. In 1965, in 1971, she buried her husband. In 1978, we lost the main dairy barn to a storm. In 16 days, that was rebuilt by the community, and we were milking in the new facility. In 1978, that facility burned down. We had a barn fire, and that burned. And Mom had a lot of grief in her life, and it was that morning, Sunday. It was on a Monday morning. And she sat on the old concrete porch in front of the barn, and everything she had built seemed to be going up in flames. And that morning she was just bewailing the fact, why, Lord? Why does it have to be me again? Couldn't it have been somebody else? Why me? And a neighbor man comes up and puts his hand on Mom's shoulder, and he just says, Verna, we'll just build you another one. When you experience community on that level, you don't just freely walk away from it. Mm-hmm. That is something that will make an impression on you that you just never want to take for granted. Mm-hmm. We can fast forward Mom's life. Then she passed away in 2017. My wife and I had the opportunity to sit at her bedside, and we knew she was fading, and there were some things I wanted to ask her. But bringing up the subject of death in that time is not easy. It's not easy. And I was like, how do I ask Mom some of these questions? And I asked her, I said, Mom, your life. I said, was it a long time? And she said, Jerry, it was just a few days, and I had such a good life.
Wow.
Sometimes when I get discouraged, my days get a little bit long, and I think of that. And I know that once we get close to Jordan, and we can see into the next life where Mom was, it's just a few days, and the battle's worth it. Mm-hmm. And that was what she instilled in us children. It was the willingness to keep fighting. When things were down and things were not looking up and things looked like she'd been dealt a poor stack of cards. I mean, very seldom did she get the rook. But she was willing to keep living, keep doing it for us children. And the example she was, it's why I am who I am.
And
or
it's
try to be.
Winning doesn't build character.
No, it doesn't.
Losing is what builds character. And what she instilled in you was because of what she went through.
It was.
And you know, when you talked about, you know, how the community they'll just build you another one.
Yeah.
I mean, you said you can't walk away from that. The impact it left on you. The impact that it leaves on the people outside looking in is largely unknown, but it is very impactful as well. I think, well, I go back to the nickel mine shooting.
Yeah.
How that community forgave the shooter and visited the shooter. If you don't know, he shot, what, 8?
Five.
5.
8. 5 died.
5 died.
8 girls and 5 died.
At a parochial Amish school. And they forgave him, and they visited the widow
Yes.
and made things right. And it just showed, like, forgiveness as a community. And I remember watching the news on that, and I think it was CNN. They just could not believe that this community could go to that level of forgiveness. And that, to me, showed, like, from the outside in, it showed the world what it means to be a part of something that's bigger than yourself.
Yes. I like to explain it this way, Mike. When our women prepare a casserole or a dish, and it's a fairly big pot, and only the women know what all goes in there. But if they forget to put the salt in, the end result is very bland. But if they put the salt in, you don't see the salt. You can't pick out individual salt, but you can taste it that it's in there. I hope that's the effect of this type of community within the greater world. Bringing that little bit of salt will influence the whole pot.
You're not sure what it is, but you're sure it's in there.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
We're not sure that we're doing any good, but if you take it out, it sure makes a difference.
Mm-hmm.
If that makes sense.
That makes a lot of sense. It's a wonderful way of looking at it, too.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. So, Mike and Brian, thanks for this opportunity. Appreciate it. It's part of, not that I think I want to be seen. If people walk past my casket when I die and they say, oh, that's the guy that was always the public face of the Amish, they had it all wrong. I just want to portray a little bit of that saltiness and forget who I am, because I'm part of something much greater than myself.
Jerry, thank you.
Thank you.
For being on. This is really, I love the fact that you talk about community like this. And I'm just hoping that people see what that means. You painted a beautiful picture. So thank you for that.